Good evening. The hour being after 7:30, it's my honor and privilege to call the February 13th, 2020 school committee meeting to order. Our first order of business is the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America
and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Excellent. Welcome. I missed my old seat at the end of the table. Our second order of business is the Walpole High School student report. This evening we have Ms. Darcy Coleman. Ms. Coleman.
Good evening. As February break is approaching, tomorrow will be a half day. On this day, seniors have the opportunity to participate in an in-school field trip called Adulting 101, where they can learn necessary life skills such as budgeting and ways to live a healthy lifestyle. Yesterday, the boys and girls hockey team hosted an ALS awareness night. Chuck a Puck was a fundraiser where students and other spectators had the opportunity to purchase a puck for $5 to be tossed during halftime of both the boys and girls games, with the closest puck winning a gift card. All proceeds went to For You I Will Fight, and over $3,000 was raised. Students also wore red shirts to school to show their support. The wrestling team had their senior night yesterday, and the girls basketball team celebrated their senior night on Tuesday with a win against Milton. The boys basketball team will play Sharon this Sunday. The track team will compete at divisionals on Friday, and the gymnastics team placed in the top 10 during their base state meet. The math team placed 5th out of 36 teams during their regular season and have officially qualified for playoffs. Monday, February 24th marks the beginning of the annual March Pride-ness contest. This competition between homerooms will run through April 3rd, and students will receive a ticket when they demonstrate one of the core values: positivity, respect, integrity, drive, and empathy. There is a donation drive in support of Bags of Hope. Bags of Hope is a community-driven project funded by human trafficking survivor Jasmine Grace that helps victims find their voice, along with getting toiletries and other necessities. Suggested donations include women's socks, feminine hygiene products, toothpaste, deodorant, shampoos and conditioners, and chapstick. And also notes of encouragement are highly encouraged. Donations will be collected now through February 27th, and boxes are located in the WHS lobby, cafeteria, and the Walpole Public Library. The Green Team met today after school and will schedule their next meeting after break. New members are always welcome. The Spanish Club held a meeting today to discuss future events while enjoying snacks and refreshments. The PM Club will be traveling to Boat Aboard, a questing experience this Friday. Any student that has paid their activity fee is welcome and can see Ms. Bacon with any questions. There will be a community service trip to Thailand February 2021. Students will visit interesting sites as well as participating in 2 service projects. See Ms. Wick for more information. Thank you.
Thank you, Darcy. Any questions for Ms. Coleman? Very good. Thank you. We move on to new business, having no recognitions. We now
Thank you very much.
Have a good night.
We now move on to the SEL Steering Committee. Dr. Goff.
Yes, I'm not going to say too much of this because I don't want to steal your thunder, so I will let them present. The Walpole Public Schools does have a preschool through 12th grade approach to social emotional learning, as we've dubbed it SEL. And the SEL program in the district is really guided at a district level by the SEL Steering Committee in conjunction with the goal of the strategic plan. So I'll let them introduce themselves and explain a little bit about the committee.
So we're excited to be here. I'm Mara Garrity, and I'm a special ed teacher at Fisher Elementary School. I've been at Fisher for 8 years, and prior to that, I was actually a student at Boyden, Fisher, and at Johnson.
Mm-hmm. And I'm Sarah Scales. I'm the school adjustment counselor at Johnson Middle School, and this will be my 3rd year working there. And so really what we're going to kind of take you guys through is not just only the work that we've been doing and the process of what we've been doing, but we understand that a lot of us are really coming into this meeting with varying types of knowledge of what social and emotional learning is. So we really wanted to make sure that we sort of outline what it is, why it's important. As you guys will see in your handouts that you were provided a copy of the slides, but you should have also been provided a double-sided handout that really talks about research and evidence-based practices for why social and emotional learning is so important. Laura will sort of get into kind of a condensed version of that, but we think it's so important, in addition to telling what it is, the benefits and the research behind why embedding social and emotional learning is so important in our school communities. So we're going to start off with a definition of what social emotional learning is. One acronym that you guys are going to hear a few times in this presentation and a lot of the resources that we've given you is CASEL. So CASEL is the Collaborative for Academic, Social, and Emotional Learning. It's essentially the sort of golden standard organization that actually Massachusetts Department of Elementary and Secondary Education, as well as districts and states across the country, really adopt their framework and their definition for what social and emotional learning is. So we as well, going into this work, really have to start on the basis of this definition before moving into any of the other work that we're doing. So social and emotional learning, also known as SEL, another acronym you guys will hear a lot, is the process through which children and adults understand and manage emotions, set and achieve positive goals, feel and show empathy for others, establish and maintain positive relationships, and make responsible decisions. And a few key words that we really want to point out in this definition is the idea that social and emotional learning is an ongoing process. So it's not one curriculum, it's not one lesson or one even school policy or practice, but it really is talking about being intentional, embedding these practices and policies into our school days and in our school culture. So it is a process, and we'll get into that a little bit more. The other important piece to point out about this definition is that it's not only about our students developing these skills, but it's about us as the adults also developing these skills as well. So whether it's the stakeholders of parents and community, whether it's us as staff and support staff in the building, down to our bus drivers, our custodians, that we are all responsible for developing these skills within our school climates and cultures every day.
Okay, so why social emotional learning? So I want you guys to think of a time that you've been really stressed or anxious or worried about something, but you're supposed to focus on something else. So if students are stressed and worried about something happening at home or with their friendships or their peer relationships, they can't access the curriculum. If they're emotionally unavailable, you're not going to be able to access what you're supposed to be learning. Studies have shown that with SEL, there's an 11% increase in academic outcomes compared to schools that do not have SEL practices in place. There's an increased ability for students to manage stress, depression. They have a better attitude about themselves and the relationships of people around them. There's been shown to have a positive impact of up to 18 years later on academics, conduct problems, emotional distress, and decrease in drug use when SEL is in place. Other reasons that it's important, there's an 11-to-1 return on investment. So for example, the more funding that we put into SEL now, the less that we'll need to later on. So studies have shown that somewhere in society we'll have less incarcerations, less necessary mental health needs, and less substance abuse. It's also shown to have reduced poverty, and it improves our lifetime outcomes. If you have a positive self-view about yourself and the relationships with those around you, you want to have a positive impact on society. So why does Walpole Public Schools need SEL? So we are here to create a unified vision of SEL across all Walpole Public Schools. We're looking to gather feedback from staff and students for climate surveys to understand our current practices and to determine where we need to be moving forward. And we are also looking to develop competencies and standards to have common language that's developmentally appropriate for students from pre-K all the way up to 12th grade.
So now we're going to dive into a little bit about the social and emotional learning framework set forth by CASEL. So when we're talking about the why behind all of this, we sort of have to have a framework to really embed the skills that we want our students and staff to be learning. So as you guys notice in the middle of the framework, there are 5 core competencies or skills that CASEL has put forth that we hope to embed, integrate, and build in our students and our staff, and ultimately our communities. If you'll notice, it's very intentional the way that it's actually put in a literal circle, because as I said in the definition, it is an ongoing process, it is a cycle, it's something that's we want to be intentional, that's evolving, that's ever growing. And so basically the idea is that we want these competencies to be embedded within the context that you see around it. So in classrooms, this can look like SEL curriculum and instruction. In schools, it looks like school-wide policies and practices. And then for homes and communities, and kind of what we're doing here tonight, it's about family and community partnerships as well. I am going to dive a little bit into what each of these competencies are. I'm not going to read the full definitions as you have those in front of you, but kind of just give you guys the gist of what each of these skills are. And it's important to know that these don't exist in any particular order. You may notice some of the skills in each of these might overlap with one another, but it's the idea that we want these to be embedded. So self-awareness is essentially the ability to accurately recognize one's own emotions and thoughts and how they impact our behavior. So this can look like self-confidence, a growth mindset, identifying our emotions, and even our perspective towards a situation. Social awareness is the ability to take a perspective of someone else and even empathize with other people, especially those from diverse backgrounds and cultures. So this can look like building the skills of perspective taking, empathy, and even appreciating the diversity of those around us. Self-management is the ability to successfully navigate our emotions, thoughts, and actions in different types of situations. So the skills we hope to develop with this competency: self-discipline, organization skills, impulse control, and even stress management. Relationship skills, it's the ability to establish and maintain healthy and rewarding relationships. So not just the idea that we're building relationships, but are those relationships safe? Are they healthy? Are they rewarding to us and those around us? And that can look like building our communication skills, teamwork, collaborative problem solving, and even relationship building. And then the fifth core competency, which kind of does require a higher order level of thinking, is responsible decision making. And that's really the ability to make constructive choices about our own behavior and our social interactions within the established social norms, perhaps established school rules, even when we're considering safety concerns and the ethical standards of the world around us. So that is looking at identifying problems, evaluating solutions, analyzing those solutions, and looking at what is our greater kind of civic or ethical responsibility in the situations that we're in.
So, knowing all that, we're going to see, using that, where are we going from here? So far we have a district-wide SEL committee that has stakeholders from every school within our district. And it's made up of people with a spectrum of knowledge on SEL and a wide variety of backgrounds. We have guidance counselors, special ed teacher, we have foreign language teachers, occupational therapists. So we have a wide variety of staff on our committee. We meet monthly to discuss our vision and where we need to be going forward. Sarah and I meet bi-weekly to kind of do more of the background work that we need to do. Step 3, as you see, we've checked off already. We have developed our draft vision statement, which Sarah will get to in one of our next slides. Moving forward from there, our next step is to create a climate survey, and this will be distributed to staff and students across the district. We want to get some feedback from the results of that survey. We're going to get some feedback on where areas of strength that we have and areas that we need to improve upon going forward. After that, we're looking to develop some SEL core competencies, standards, and frameworks. And then finally, our end goal is to have an SEL guide for the Walpole Public Schools. And Sarah and I will be doing a bulk of that work over the summer.
And so with that in mind, sort of the last piece, or like our product that we really want to share with you guys tonight, is our final draft of our vision and mission statement. Before I actually just go over what it is, I kind of want to talk about, or we want to talk about kind of the development of how we got to this vision and mission statement. And the reason we want to spend a little time on that is because we truly believe, as co-chairs of this committee, and our whole committee has really felt that this vision and mission statement is going to be our sort of foundation and our driving force for all the other work we're going to be doing. So we found it really important to spend a few sessions working on this because we know how important this is going to be. We want all of our meetings to start off with this vision in mind, so we remember the why of why we're on this committee and why we're doing the work that we're doing. So basically the development of it is we first, at one of our initial meetings, just asked everyone, why is social and emotional learning important for Walpole Public Schools for our students? Why is it important for our staff? And why is it important for our community members and family members? Once we sort of gather all that, we also looked at all of the core values that have been developed in all of the schools across the district as well. We pulled out common themes, common words, After that, we also looked at sample and exemplar vision and mission statements from different districts all across the country in different areas that were already implementing SEL very strongly in their districts. After sort of pulling all of those resources together, we probably created, I want to say, like upwards of 20 different vision and mission statements. All the stakeholders on our committee, all committee members were involved in this. And from there, we really boiled it down to the vision and mission statement you see up here. And we really took everyone's values into account, our beliefs, our whys, and all those other resources that I just talked about. So essentially what we have to share with you guys, and the reason this is a draft as well is because you guys are also an incredibly important stakeholder in this, and so we are hoping that after this meeting, any feedback you guys can give us, we want to also incorporate that and take that into account when we're finalizing this as well. So what we came up with is that the Walpole Public Schools are committed to the social and emotional well-being of our school communities. We believe that SEL is inseparable from academic learning. SEL is an ongoing process that promotes the skills necessary for developing the whole child. Through an integrated approach, our district aims to foster inclusive, safe, and supportive school climates, positive and collaborative relationships, compassionate, resilient, and respectful students and staff, learning environments that embrace our diverse needs, cultures, and backgrounds, and we are committed to providing access to the resources necessary to promote this vision. And so that was what we essentially developed. And so with that in mind, it's kind of our end product right now. We obviously want to open this up to any questions that you all might have now that we've kind of gone through everything.
Questions for Ms. Garrity and Ms. Scales? Ms. Wuccini?
That's a lot of work. Thank you so much for
Yeah.
doing it. Really important work, too. I had a question about the climate surveys.
Mm-hmm.
What are you looking for information? What are your thoughts about that?
Yeah, so we actually, at the most recent meeting that we just had, we essentially, after each meeting, like give all of our committee members homework. And so essentially part of the homework was to come back with questions that were developmentally appropriate. And we also kind of hashed out the different categories of the survey. So we're really looking at when we're looking at if kids feel safe in our school, so school culture. We're also looking at relationships between colleagues for the staff one. We're looking at relationships with our administrators, relationships among students, relationships with our students. So really looking at the school culture, relationships, the overall school climate, any policies and practices that are in place that might support SEL. And then in addition to that, more specifically for our staff, there's going to be a section about what is their current knowledge about what social and emotional learning is. So it's one thing to ask all these questions, but we also want a kind of generic knowledge base of where are our staff right now in terms of what their knowledge even is of social and emotional learning. So the climate surveys are going to be developmentally appropriate for, we're doing like grades 3 through 5 are going to have one, the middle school have one, and the high school have one, and then the staff will all be given the same survey. And then we're also looking to create a climate survey for district staff as well, because that's also equally as important when we're talking more at the macro level about do our policies and practices in our school district align with social and emotional learning as well.
And what about parents?
So actually, so that's great that you asked that. So when we were first asked to create this committee, we also know that Spark Kindness in particular is working a lot with parents to kind of gain their buy-in and their feedback. So I think our idea down the line, essentially right now, that's not our focus, but we're hoping to collaborate with them to see what feedback they've gotten and intertwine that with what the work we're currently doing. Our work right now is very, school recommendation based and school focused, but we do want to partner with them and see what feedback have they been getting from parents and community members as well.
Yeah, and even overall, I think the parents, it would be great for them to know what you're doing.
Absolutely.
And all this great work, because sometimes, kids can give a little piece of it, but if there's some way you can communicate that, I think it's really important.
Absolutely.
So they can understand what's going on in school.
Yeah, and I think for us too, like Maura was saying at the beginning, like why we're doing this is so, like right now, it's not to say we don't have any good practices or anything like that in place, but it's very like one school might have these practices, and it's great for schools to have their own culture and their own environment and their own setting, but at the same time, what is the common language? What are these common standards looking like? Right now, we don't really have that being bridged, so the more we can communicate that with families too, that this is what we believe as a district, then I think the more powerful these practices and policies and programs are going to be for families and students across the district.
Further questions? Mrs. Gallivan?
Thank you. It's an awful lot of work, and it's good to have it here because we've been hearing about it for years. And I think that I agree with Beth about the parents. I think that I know that we had an episode around bullying a couple of years ago, and after talking to parents as the sort of what lessons can we learn, they were really asking for, share with us what you're doing, because if this is important work, I think it was two things. One, we can work together using the same language,
Right.
supporting the same ideas. And secondly, I think there's a piece of it that feels like, wait a minute, are you doing my job, teaching my kid values? So I really do think it's important to figure out how you're going to interact with parents, because Spark Kindness is going to be a slow process. So anyway, I just think that that's something that you need to keep in mind. The other thing I would say is, have you looked at using existing surveys like Panorama?
Yeah.
Yes, we have.
Because, then they're whatever, like criterion based, and they're solid. But we're not a district that does a lot of surveys. And I remember doing them when my kids were in school and being sort of frustrated by the homemade survey because it was too general. If you have a student in high school, many people have two. And if you talk about things in general, overall people are usually pretty satisfied. But the surveys didn't give you a chance to say, except I'm concerned about this. It was just too general. So that's where I have looked at some of the things that Panorama has done, and I think that they are thoughtful in terms of giving people a chance to really give you more useful feedback, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. And so that is actually one of the resources that we've been pulling
A
from.
lot of things from,
A lot
yeah.
of things from is Panorama,
That's good.
as well as there was a RISE index for that stands for that created a valid based survey for district level. That's kind of how we got that idea. So we absolutely are taking into account all those evidence-based
Great, thank you.
surveys to make
And-
sure we're in developmentally appropriate. I think that's the other thing as well, that we're not going to ask the same questions
To
of
a high school
a high
student
school
as
that
you
we're
would.
going to a third grader. So really making sure the developmentally appropriate, but also highlighting those specific skill sets that we want to that we talked about.
Yeah, and I think you make an excellent point too, that we need to be in conjunction with the parents
Transparent,
doing this,
yeah.
because as we were saying, I mean, it takes a village,
Yeah.
it really does. And as long as we are having these skills practiced at home and within our school and within the community, that's the goal, right? Because we want to create good people in the world, so
Yeah, they were really looking for that, so that's great.
that's good feedback to bring back to the committee.
Excellent. Ms. Giltitz.
Yeah, I also wanted to mention that survey we had done a couple years ago.
Yeah.
I'm sure you're looking at that too, so that you're not duplicating it exactly or asking things a different way, or where there was follow-up needed. I don't know, it just might be a good place to.
Right.
Yeah, we've looked at that, and then we've also, I know a couple schools individually have also done surveys, so also pulling that and looking at it as well. And then we've also been looking at questions, because in certain grade levels, the MCAS vocal results as well. We've also been pulling from there to make sure that, not that we're not only duplicating, but if there's a certain area that we want to go more in depth about, particularly for a certain grade or in a certain topic area or a certain competency area, we're also pulling from those results in those surveys that were given out to students across the district as well.
Further questions, Dr. Goff?
Thank you very much. It was very comprehensive, and I think it's important for the community to see what is exactly SEL, that what and why it's so important, and the resources that go along with it. But yes, the importance of the unified vision and the common language, so we have some consistency among with the district. And then also, I'm glad that you brought up the vocal. Sorry for MCAS, because there may be, there are some good questions from there, and I understand not duplicating, but looking for that. And then also, just to finish up, looking at the climate surveys among across different stakeholders, that will also allow you to see if there are any themes or patterns.
Right.
Or if one group is saying one thing, but another group
Right.
is not. thinking of it a different way.
Yeah.
That's also valuable data.
Exactly.
So
Yeah.
thank you for your hard work. It's
Yeah,
greatly
thank you for that
appreciated.
feedback.
Thanks.
Appreciate it.
Anything else? Excellent. Thank you very much.
Thank you
you
very
so
much.
much.
Moving on to our next order of business, strategic plan goal 2 update.
Yes, Dr. Cleary is here to give you an update on Goal 2, and Action Steps Strategic Plan, and answer any questions you may have.
Good evening, everyone. So, before I really dive into Goal 2, I just wanted to expand a little bit and give you some context and some history to some of the work that Sarah and Maura have done. They've clearly done a great job and have taken the bull by the horns this year in getting the task force up and running. But I think what I wanted to tell you is this is sort of born out of some work that was done last spring with Dr. Goff, Mr. Hahn. The district had written a grant, the Safe and Supportive Schools grant, that really has allowed this work to be done. The folks are doing great work. I think it's nice that we can recognize their work because they're putting a lot into it, and with this grant we're able to recognize the work that we're doing, along with some of the things that we're going to be doing upcoming in terms of Spark Kindness. So I wanted to give you just that little bit of context that grant that was written a year ago now, almost a year ago, has really launched the work that's been done this year by Maura and Sarah. So with that as sort of a base, I'll talk about where we are with our goal and sort of where we're going. So goal number 2 is to foster and strengthen the social and emotional well-being of the school community. And it has 3 different objectives to it. Objective 1 is to identify and provide professional development and resources for families, students, and staff. And really with this objective, Maura and Sarah have taken a lot of what I could have said and really given it to you in their presentation. The action steps under that objective, a lot of them are being achieved through the work that they're doing. So they've given you a nice update on that. What I will say is when we spoke at strategic planning, I think some of you were there, Dr. Goff had asked us to look at what are our priorities with each of our goals and our objectives. And one of the priorities that our group has come up with are some of the things that you heard tonight in terms of finding assessments for climate data, making some decisions off of that data, and sort of where we're moving in terms of that. So they clearly have done a lot of work with that, and that is our priority for the remainder of the year. And that's really the update for Objective 1. Objective number 2 is to embed consistent social emotional learning practices across the curriculum. So we're seeing this right now in some areas. At the elementary level, we do employ a responsive classroom, which does weave in elements of SEL into its practice. At the high school level, we've seen the development of the Pride program over the last year or so. At middle school, I know in our strategic plan group last week, some middle school representatives have talked about specific lessons where they've used some SEL artifacts and really woven SEL into the lesson. What we identified as a priority under this objective, one of the action steps talks about having the necessary staff to employ all the things that we're looking to do in terms of SEL. And we started to do that with the hiring of the elementary adjustment counselors last year. We looked at this as a priority going forward, knowing that it's a district budgetary priority, but I think it's also a priority for the team on goal number 2 is to bring in the folks who are necessary to really do this work within the district. And then objective 3 is to engage, educate, and partner with students, families, and communities. I think this is the objective where we really engage with Spark Kindness. When we met last week, we had talked about, I know we'd heard from some of the Spark Kindness representatives, but we as a team would like to engage those folks in the future. We were looking at the fall and hammering out a date where we can meet with the folks individually and really launch or help launch Spark Kindness's involvement in the town, not just the school district, but the town as a whole. So that is our priority for Objective 3. I think that covers each of the 3 objectives. Any questions on where we're at with goal 2?
Questions for Dr. Quealy? Thanks.
Yes?
You're number 3 as well, special education program update?
I am, yep.
Stay up there.
So I know, Dr. Goff and I met in special ed subcommittee with several of you, and I know one of the discussion points was some of our specialized programs in the district. So I'm here to talk a little bit about that tonight. Really, the majority of our students with IEPs in the district do receive their services within their home schools and largely in the general ed setting. And this is really consistent with our philosophy of inclusion. But there are instances where students' needs are beyond the scope of this model, and services are provided in district-wide programs at specific schools within the district at each level. So those are the programs I'm going to be talking about a little bit tonight. And really, they fall into sort of 3 categories. The first of which I'll talk about is the partnership program. And these programs are for students with significant emotional, behavioral, and mental health needs. We have programs at each of the 3 levels. At the elementary, it's at Elm Street. At the middle school, it's at Johnson. And we have a program at the high school as well. Each site is staffed with a special ed teacher and a clinical social worker. And several ESPs support personnel to support students in the program. As you would expect, counseling is a common theme and a common service to, I would say, all of the students in these 3 different programs. There's a lot of case coordination that goes on between our in-school counselors and mental health teams that exist on the outside for students. At the elementary level, the program is somewhat flexible in that it allows kids to receive instruction in their core contents either in a small group setting in the partnership room at Elm Street or in the inclusion setting with ESP support in the general ed rooms. At the secondary level, the model shifts a little bit more to that inclusion setting with ESP and special ed support in the rooms. There is a partnership room at both middle school and high school. But that's not really where core content instruction takes place. It's more of a spot for counseling, helping students to regulate themselves if they are encountering an issue during the course of the day. So we don't really do a lot of core instruction outside of the general ed classroom at the middle school and high school level. Okay. The second one I'll talk about is a program that supports students with developmental delay and really largely related to autism spectrum disorder. These students have significant academic and learning issues as well as social and communication needs. At the elementary level, this program is housed at the Fisher School and it's titled the District Learning Program. At the middle school, it's located at Byrd, the Cooperative Learning Center. At the high school level, it is the Essentials program. A little bit different with this program in that core contents are taught outside of the general ed curriculum, or outside the general ed setting. ELA and math specifically are taught out in small groups outside of the general ed setting. So students will spend anywhere from 50 to 75% of their day in small group settings. Inclusion does take place in specials, lunch, recess, other events that go on during the day in the various schools. But that's a major difference between partnership and this program is that there's a lot more small group instruction that takes place. Students take standard MCAS and are working towards high school diploma. In most cases, they do have support services along with the academic services, such as speech and occupational therapy or maybe behavioral support with our BCBA. Heidi Hawkins, who is here tonight, does support a number of our students at the high school level. Heidi is here gathering hours for her special ed administrator license, so she's watching me do this presentation tonight. I think those are the major points I wanted to say about that program. And then finally, the varied instruction program, and at the high school, the career and ed program. These are programs for students with more significant developmental and intellectual delays that impact academic skills, adaptive skills, communication, and social skills. This could be autism related, but not exclusively. We do have kids with complex medical needs or diagnoses such as Down syndrome within these programs. At the elementary level, it's housed at Boynton. At the middle school level, it's at Johnson. And we do have the career and ed program at the high school level. Historically, we've not had a program like this at the preschool level, but one of the recommendations from Dr. Taft Farrell's evaluation, we're looking at starting something like this at the preschool level as we see kids' needs become more and more significant at younger and younger ages. The curriculum is significantly modified, or even replacement curriculum is offered to meet student needs. Most, if not all, core content curriculum is delivered in small group instruction, but inclusion opportunities are woven into students' days. Most of the students in these programs do not take standard MCAS. They take the MCAS alternative. Thus, high school diploma is not the ultimate goal for students, but really a certificate of completion is awarded when they turn 18 as seniors. And then most do continue with us after age 18 up to age 22, and a larger focus of their education then becomes on vocational skills and adaptive skills in the community. So those are the three programs that we offer that are sort of outside of the inclusion setting. I did do a quick look at the numbers of all the programs. No program houses more than 20 students, and most are in either the single digit or within the teens range. I think if there are questions on any of the programs, I'll certainly answer them for you.
Just a couple to start off. In the past, we've taken students from some neighboring communities for some of these programs. Do we do that at all now, or is there space to do that now?
Yep. Right. Currently, we do have a student that we tuition in from a neighboring district. We're always looking at those opportunities. Those are things that we as directors, when we meet, we have different cases that could potentially fit in our neighboring programs. So that's certainly possible, and we're always having those. Well, we have those discussions when referrals are made. So.
And I know this came up during our public hearings, and you may have thought more about the answer to this. What are you looking at the possibility of the next sort of program you would bring in district, or the next sort of need that may be best suited or addressed for our students internally rather than externally? Are you seeing a population large enough to warrant that sort of change, or just are you seeing any trends to that effect?
Potentially. I think what we always look for are a cohort of students that might have similar needs that could be addressed in a different way, and thus sometimes that's how programs are kind of born. So we do have these existing programs, but if we do have a cohort of kids whose needs are significant enough that if we don't have a program and can create one, we'll certainly look at that, with the idea of allowing the kids to stay in district. If that's the choice versus sending an entire cohort out of district, we'll certainly look at developing a program.
Any other questions, Dr. Freeland? Ms. Gallivan?
Just two. I'm thinking about the reverse of what Bill was just talking about. Are there any programs that we just don't really have enough students to continue running? And in that case, what's the plan? Or like, I'm not saying that you're going to announce a change tonight, but like,
Right.
if you had one or two students in a group, what would you consider if you felt like it's just not viable to run a program for them?
Well, the alternative then would be looking at out-of-district placements, for those students.
Yeah.
Right now, I don't see any program that would dissolve for that
Okay,
reason.
great. That's good enough. That's
There
that's
is-
fine.
Yeah, there's a program with some low numbers, but I think in terms of the transition for next year, that will change.
Okay, great. And then the other question is co-taught classes. Is that something that fits in what you just mentioned, or is that sort of like the next level of inclusion?
I think that's more sort of under the inclusion umbrella, because all of those services take place in the general ed setting. So that's sort of your base student with needs. So specific learning disabilities, communication disabilities, those are students who have the ability to work successfully in the general ed curriculum or the general ed setting with support. But I think it really falls in the inclusion umbrella as opposed to sort of specific program umbrella.
So do we have co-taught classes in most of our schools at this point? Or-
Yes. Yeah.
Yes.
At specifically at high school and middle school.
Okay. And I know a couple of years ago, the high school report was concerning about we needed to make some adjustments on that. Do you feel like we're heading in a good direction?
I think we're heading in a very good direction.
Great.
And that report is something that we circle back to every so often, myself and the high school special ed leaders. So they do point to the improvement in co-taught classes, and they point to the improvement in the academic support classes as well.
Great.
So.
Thank you.
Further questions, Ms. Denito?
So first of all, thank you for coming and sharing this, because as the newest person here, it's really useful for me. Just to get back to Nancy's question about the co-taught classes, you talked about the middle school and the high school. So at the elementary school for students who fit under kind of the SLD or communication category, are there not push-in special ed services, or?
There are.
Okay.
There are. But those take place, there isn't a special ed teacher that's anchored
Right.
in a classroom all day.
Mhm.
But yes, B-grid service takes place, and there is push-in service. They're
Okay.
just not anchored. We don't call it co-taught.
Right, there's not a fourth grade class with 2 teachers that are just there all day together. Right, okay, thank you.
Further questions? Mrs. Dr. Gott?
Thanks, John. Just, I think it's also important to note that the programs, these in-district programs, they also adapt and change over time to meet the needs of the students. Like, I can remember, coming into Bird in, 1992, and having very, very few programs, or the programs that we had, and they changed. They changed 5 years later, 10 years later. They've been tiered. Many, many more programs than there were, 20 years ago, 27 years ago. And I think they will continue to change and adapt as students come in, because the students, their needs change, and, that's our responsibility to make sure that we're changing to meet their needs, and they look much different than they did.
And each year in the springtime, we collect the data. We have conversations with the staff members who sort of run these programs, and we look at, who's moving from 5th to 6th, who's moving from 8th to 9th. What are those programs going to look like next year, and what are the staffing patterns that are going to have to move with them to meet all the students' needs. So that those discussions are starting to happen right now.
Ms. Sarek?
I just wanted to say thank you.
Sure.
Being on the special ed committee, this was something that we thought it was important, because having a son on an IEP, you sort of know things at that level, and I don't think everyone is really aware of the other programs that we offer, and that we are evaluating them all the time. So thank you
Sure.
for presenting.
I will say, and I know this has come up at our CPAC, and I've talked to several parents about it, and this goes back to some of the work with the team chairs before I got here. Each of the programs has a program description, and they are posted on our website. So if folks want more information, there are sort of one-pagers on each of the programs with some of the students that it serves, some of the methods that are there. So those are all accessible for folks if they want to take a look.
Thank you very much, Doctor.
Sure.
Have a good evening. Our last order of new business is just a first reading of the Healthy Resolution for the Respectful School District. It's a initiative led by Lieutenant Governor Polito in conjunction with the Massachusetts Association of School Committees. Ms. Denizio brought this to our attention. I'd like to say a little more about it. Please feel free, but we're just reading it for the first time this evening.
Yeah, so this was something that I just happened to come across this campaign, and I thought that it would be a great thing for our district to support, since we do have such a focus on social emotional learning. It's part of our strategic plan, and I think a huge part of that is teaching students what constitutes a healthy relationship and also how to communicate respectfully. That's really important. So, and unfortunately, there have been incidents locally where young people have been lost to dating violence. So it's something we have to pay attention to. And I think as much as these issues have become a part of our national conversation lately, you know, we're having talks about consent and harassment and abuse, but we're still really grappling with how do we talk to our young people about these issues and kind of prepare them for adult life. So I thought that it would be a really nice thing for us to kind of reaffirm our commitment. I know we're talking about these things in our schools. Our health teachers and our counselors are talking about this, but it would be a nice thing to kind of support. And I think it's also a great thing to point out to the community. The website that goes along with the initiative is it's mass.gov/respectfully, and it has lots and lots of resources for parents, for young people. You can type in a location. You can look for local resources based on your location. And there's resources for all kinds of dating relationships, not just for heterosexual couples. There's also a lot of resources about what do I do if I'm worried about my friend, or, you know, I think I might be in an unhealthy relationship, what do I do? And also they have created these 30-second video vignettes that are animated on topics related to this, and they are all accessible on YouTube if you just search respectfully. So I think that it's a really good resource for the community to be aware of. And yeah, so you can take a look at it tonight and go from there.
The hope is to put this on a next or a very near future agenda, and hopefully maybe bring some folks in from guidance to discuss what we're already doing as a district around these issues as well. Thank you. On to Superintendent's report, Dr. Goff.
Thank you. So just to start, I'm continuing with the school visits and getting into classrooms. I think most recently, Bill and Nancy and I, we've done some tiny house projects at the elementary school where they are designing houses specifically for us, and we have a budget, and we let them know what we wanted and how we would like it designed, and they're going to work on it. And then I think after the break we're going to be invited back to see what our tiny houses look like.
Nancy and I were going to have one house together, but we couldn't agree on it.
It was a little scary concept, but yeah.
So
divided up.
So that was great. So we're looking forward to returning and see what our tiny houses look like. Since we're into the third quarter, as I visit the schools, I'll be discussing principal goals for the second half of the year and how these goals also influence our impact for teaching and learning, not only for the end of this year, but for next year. I was also at the high school and had the opportunity to be interviewed by a couple of students in the TV production class, and I was able to see a little bit more what goes behind the scenes during that process, so I thank them for providing me with that opportunity. 2 weeks ago, I met with Sherry Cohen. She's the program coordinator for the Council on Aging, and we discussed some ways to continue our school district's partnership with them. Just an interesting fact about Sherry, that she's been on the Norton School Committee. She's been a Norton School Committee member for the last 4 years. So we were able to talk about schools, you know, pick her brain a little bit. And what's really interesting, that the middle school, I was just talking to Principal Morgan from Johnson, and he was just over there. And even though their school, thinking of the middle school building project, even though their school is older, they both said that it's designed in a very interesting way that's really developed to support the middle school child. So Mr. Morgan said, you know, we may want to contact them to just go and see it, because he said it's just designed very well, and even though it's been a building that's been there for many, many years, they really had this vision about supporting the middle school child in their actual facility construction, so it may be worth going to take a look at. In terms of MSBA, we had a meeting on Monday, February 3rd at the Massachusetts School Building Authority. And as you may remember, for the community, they voted this past fall to invite the town of Walpole into the feasibility study for Burr Middle School with the consideration of Johnson Middle School as a possible consolidation for grades 6 through 8. And the town of Walpole is pleased to announce that the MSBA voted officially to appoint the Compass Project Management into the owner's project management firm for the middle school project. So this is really the first critical step, and in the Module 2 is forming the project team. Compass Project, as people may remember, they served as the owner's project manager for the police station, the fire station, and the Council on Aging. And they were instrumental. They ensured that all 3 projects were completed on time and under budget. So with the OPM selection process complete and they're on board, the next step is to begin the designer selection process before undertaking the feasibility study later this year. So that was good news for us. So that was Monday. Last week was a busy week. And then on Thursday, we held the district strategic planning full day event on February 6th, and I know many of you were able to attend, so thank you for that. And each year we review the district's progress with achieving our goals, our objectives, our action steps outlined in our strategic plan. We had school staff, educational leaders, town board members, students, families, parents, community members. They were very actively engaged in the review, and they gave us a variety of perspectives. We really began the work, as Dr. Quilly mentioned, on prioritizing action steps that we'll pursue in order to achieve both the academic and the social emotional skills of our students. So we really focused on 4 key points: that the decisions that we make should have an impact on the instructional core, and the decision that we make should really drive the systematic improvement of teaching and learning. And then also, the plan should be written with deliberate action, like as I mentioned, to improve both the academic and the social emotional skills. And the plan needs to provide the opportunity and equity for all students. So we really wanted to build capacity and coherence, and really focus on not only the priorities, but taking a look at those accomplishments. What does success look like? What are those indicators of success? And I want to thank Bill Hahn for co-facilitating with me. Thank you. And Mary Mortali for all of her hard work behind the scenes, because we couldn't get it done without you. So thank you, Mary. On Monday, this Monday, we held a budget presentation to the Finance Committee, and very similar to what we did at the last school committee meeting. We identified strengths of the Walpole Public School. We went into detail about the budget picture, what we needed for level services, and then we also provided detailed information about the needed positions for next year. So I just provided you with a handout of the presentation and what we handed out to the Finance Committee members, just so you can see what we went over. It was, we were in there for a while, but I just felt like it was productive. We needed to make sure that we told our story, and I really want to thank the Finance Committee for their time, for their patience, because like I said, we were there for a while. Their questions, I thought their questions were great, and their feedback, because we're coming back in March to meet with them again. So I don't know if you have any comments before I go further about the Finance Committee meeting. I know you were there, Nancy, Bill, you were there, and I know John Quealy was present, and Mike Fisher as well.
No, I thought you did a great job. I think that the budget is really complex, and it was clear that a lot of people didn't understand until it was explained, but they seemed very appreciative. So
Yeah, I thought it was a great night. I thought it was a good
I thought
night.
you did a great job.
Thank you, and I'm glad they allowed us that time to it was just the school department. There was no one else on the docket. And finally, if all goes to plan, I hope to have the winter superintendent newsletter out on Friday. So we're hoping. Here's hoping, and I think we'll be able to do it. Just some additional curriculum updates. The 6th through 8 math students participated in the second round of the iReady benchmark assessment, so we'll continue to monitor the growth in this area. Jasenia Castro and Assistant Superintendent Bill Hahn attended the Massachusetts Partnership for Diversity in Education Equity and Inclusion Conference on Friday, February 7th at Regis College in Weston. And through a MECO grant, both Elm Street and OPR students were treated to a culturally oriented school performance with Summer and Linda McLean, who were able to tell stories through cultural music performances at both elementary schools to celebrate Black History Month. And I think that was a grant through a MECO grant.
Yeah.
So that was great. And just mark your calendars. I think I gave you handouts for this. The Walpole Drug and Alcohol Coalition, believe it or not, it's their 9th annual video poster contest. And the deadline for submissions is March 4th. And they're actually adding a digital component. Instead of the posters, they're going to go digital, and working with our digital learning coaches, which is a change this year. And then also mark your calendars for the Iron Chef competition, April 7th. For those of you that might not be aware, this provides our students with the opportunity to work with master chefs to learn and explore the culinary field. So the students act as sous chefs for the master chefs and will help in preparing. And this year's competition is open to a total of 16 students from selected middle and high schools. That all went out in e-notes, so if they are interested in signing up, and they can also contact Maria Hall. And I believe that the competition will be represented from the police and fire departments, school administration, and our Walpole School Nutrition Department will be competing. So, are you doing it again, Bill? this year?
Mary got robbed last year.
I did.
Okay.
We did last year.
All right.
Like a half a point.
So
This
you
year.
guys are in it again.
Yeah, it's
Right,
gonna be
great,
good.
great. And just remember, next week the schools are on February break, and they'll resume on February 24th. Thank you.
Questions for Dr. Goff? Ms. Denizio?
Not a question, but I just want to say that that was my first time participating in a strategic planning meeting, and I want to give you and Bill and Mary a lot of credit because I felt like it was run very, very well, and it was very enjoyable for me to have the opportunity to meet and work with a lot of our staff from all of the different buildings. I got to spend time with people I kind of already knew, but then also meet new faces, and it felt productive, but it was a very enjoyable process. So just wanted to say that I thought it was very well done.
Great, thank you. A lot of quick elevator presentations, right?
Yeah.
3 minutes or less.
You did well.
You did it.
Ms. Gilson?
I just wanted to comment, I wasn't able to go to the FinCom presentation on Monday, but I really liked the graphs in here. I know we were talking about, they're complex trends that we're talking about, and to try to break it down in different ways so that different people who, you can talk about it, but when you see it, with this graph or colors, great, and it really drives home the point that things are changing and we have to keep up with the change. So I think this is great.
Thanks. There's a lot of additional data that was added for that as well, verbally, but yeah, the visual images are important.
Yeah, good job.
Anything else? Seeing none, moving on. MSBA update. We covered a lot of that. Anything further to add? Seeing none. Subcommittee activity. Budget workshop held February the 6th, 2020. We had a great budget workshop. It informed the presentation on Monday.
Very similar to, and then we presented it at school committee.
Legislative breakfast held February 7th through Tech. Mrs. Gallagher, Tech liaison.
This was this past Friday, and it was very interesting to see the early childhood center that Dedham has. That's where the breakfast was held, and there were probably a good 75 people there. Senator Lewis, who is the chair of the Education Committee, and the co-chair on the House side, Paul Lyons, I think
Tucker.
maybe Tucker, was there, and it was time well spent. Representative Paul McMurtry was there from our district, and we got a chance to interact with the legislators, and I think we know from our point of view that we're not going to see very much Chapter 70 funding this year. That the main thing we need to do is we need to see our enrollment start to increase before we're going to see any Chapter 70 money in terms of real dollars. But we are looking into what we can expect with charter school reimbursement and with the transportation component of the special education circuit breaker. So.
Yeah, and Mike Frischer and Dr. Quilly, they're going to a meeting on that February 26th about the circuit breaker and transportation.
So stay tuned on that.
Anything else? Any other subcommittees held? Citizens' comments, seeing none. Anything else for the good of the order? Seeing none, could we move on to warrants, donations, and minutes?
I'll make a motion to approve the following payroll warrant from January 23rd, number 2030 PA, for the amount listed in your packets.
Second.
Motion by Ms. Denizio, seconded by Ms. Syrick. All those in favor? Opposed? Abstained? 700.
Make a motion to accept the following, to approve the following accounts payable warrants from January 30th, 220031, and from February 6th, 220032, for the amounts listed in your packets.
Second.
Motion by Ms. Denizio, seconded by Ms. Syrick. All those in favor? Opposed? Abstained? 700. Let's take gifts. Gift.
Make a motion to approve the following gifts to Boyden and JMS from Bay State Textiles Recycling in the amount of $88.
Motion by Ms. Denizio, seconded by Ms. Syrick. All those in favor? Opposed? Abstained? 700. Someone like to take minutes? Thank you, Beth.
I'll make a motion to approve the following minutes. The first is Special Education Subcommittee meeting minutes for January 28th, 2020.
Second.
Motion by Ms. Muccini, seconded by Ms. Syrick. All those in favor? Opposed? Abstained? 700.
A motion to approve the regular school committee meeting minutes for January 30th, 2020.
Second.
Motion by Ms. Muccini, seconded by Ms. Syrick. All those in favor? Opposed? Abstained? 700.
And lastly, a motion to approve the budget workshop meeting minutes for February 6th, 2020.
Second.
Motion by Ms. Muccini, seconded by Ms. Syrick. All those in favor? Opposed? Abstained? 700.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Free and seconded by Ms. Gailchitz. All those in favor? Opposed? Abstained? 700. Thank you.